Hello and welcome to The Wilderness of Creativity, a platform for creatives and aspiring entrepreneurs to share their stories of survival. I'm your host, Lucy, and I'm so excited to share this creative journey with you. Working full-time and raising a small human has caused me to lose track and wander off-piste on several occasions, but I followed the signs and here we are, surviving the wild and feeling more connected and inspired than ever before. Whether you're a seasoned adventurer or just starting out, I'm here to cheer you on as you navigate this journey. Together, we will uncover practical tips and strategies for cultivating creativity, explore different ways of prioritising our creative energy when there are people to please and deadlines to meet. And we'll also discuss how we can foster a mindset that inspires connection, innovation and play in our daily lives. Tune in every month to hear how my guests find focus in a world that never stops buzzing and discover what it really means to take the road less travelled. Subscribe now to listen to The Wilderness of Creativity and remember to like, share and leave a review to show your support. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, so come and join in with our conversations. And that's it. Welcome to your next adventure. Hello and welcome to The Wilderness of Creativity. Today we are talking to our very special guest, playwright and PhD researcher Stacey Moon-Tracy. With a BA Honours degree in Drama and Theatre Arts from Goldsmiths, University of London, her academic journey has led her to work in a variety of education and community settings as a freelance drama workshop leader, playwright and facilitator. Stacey graduated with a Master's in Writing for Performance from the University of Derby in 2018, which culminated in an original stage play called Burning Butterflies. Stacey is currently in the final stages of completing her PhD at Coventry University, where she's focusing on playwriting as arts-based practice to explore the COVID-19 experiences of ICU nurses, and has recently received funding from Arts Council England to further develop her play Critical Care. Because I've not done anything like this before and I've not used Riverside, and the pressure of making sure that, you can get in and we can record it okay. And I'm just so glad that Sarah was on hand, because we could have been here for hours going, I can't hear you. Like, no.
It's like back to the old lockdown days, isn't it? When everyone started using Teams and Zoom.
I know. Well, I only did a little bit of online teaching because obviously the first lockdown came in March, and then they sent me home from work because I was pregnant. So I only did a little bit. But I don't know, I kind of liked it. It was different.
Yeah, it's accessible.
Yeah,
easier
exactly.
in some ways, but it's just not, it's not always the most engaging.
Being creative every day, all day, and facilitating other people being creative, it's exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah, I think you have to be really mindful of that and really careful that you're doing something for yourself, which is good that you're doing this, because I got to that point of going, I've lost myself, and hence changing my whole life trajectory.
Where are you with your research now?
Yeah, I'm in the writing up phase of the thesis now, so it's a really weird, lonely phase, and you sit there thinking, well, I'm just writing. Why is this so draining and feels so anxiety inducing? But I think it's because you're trying to convey 3 years of work into such a small amount of words, really, relatively. And also the writing kind of is helping you to formulate really what you're trying to say. And so there's a lot of thinking that's been going on. And plus it's the fear, or, it's that constant pressure of like, I've got to send this to someone now for them to look at. But, so you've got to really constantly be objective about that and not to be oversensitive to it.
and not take it personally, especially when you're trying to manage work, life, children. You feel like you're splitting yourself into, different people and wearing different hats the whole time. And that in itself is creative. This episode is really an opportunity for us to talk about the process of you writing critical care, and talk about when you are thinking about writing, the environment that you write in, what you do when you hit a wall, when you just don't feel like, the ideas aren't flowing, because I think part of it is being in the flow. I thought it would also be really interesting to talk about why you decided to come back, and why the East Midlands, because, you really have sort of carved out this network of people that you're working with, and it has been a real journey, hasn't it?
Yeah, still definitely on that journey. Still don't feel like I've not quite got out the slow lane yet, but that's fine, because I think I put lots of expectations on myself, but actually since doing the PhD, I guess I've really started to learn more about who I am and what I really want to do and why I'm doing it.
Because if I think back to like when we first met, like I instantly could tell that you were very clear about what you wanted to do, and you've always been really grounded. So from the youth theatre programme at the Palace Theatre, where did you go next? Because we kind of went off on our separate paths a little bit. You went to work at the college, didn't you?
West Knox College, yeah. So I got offered maternity cover and thought, I'll try that. um, I didn't really think I was qualified to do it to begin with, but I thought I'll try it. I'll give it a go, and I absolutely fell in love with teaching performing arts. And then one thing led to another, and basically got offered a full-time permanent position there. And it was a real awakening to something new and a path I'd never really considered. And I guess what it brought together for me was, looking back now, I can reflect on this, but it brought together my love of participatory arts, working with people, helping them to reach their potential, directing, facilitating, with research. Yes, it wasn't heavy on the research side of things, but I was getting to do research. I was getting to think in those ways. It was helping other people to think about theatre, drama, performing arts in different ways as well. And I thrived. I absolutely thrived. I loved it. Really, really loved it. For a long time, I was doing that. Actually gave up all of my freelance stuff to concentrate on that. I think there was a little battle, though, going on in my head where, I always thought, this isn't what I thought I was going to do. So have I given up on what I thought I was going to do?
Mm.
And, there were times when I then had to sit down, have a chat with myself. Well, you love what you're doing. You get to direct all these shows with these brilliant young actors. You've got stability as well. That it was offering me some stability in my life, which freelance work, as we know, doesn't always offer that. But there was still some sort of burning desire in me that I felt like I wasn't quite living up to my own creative potential. So I was giving a lot to other people. I was getting a lot back, don't get me wrong. But I felt like there was something missing. So after I had my two children, and I'm trying to think how old they both were. They were both really little. I decided to pursue writing, and went back to uni and did an MA whilst teaching and looking after two little kids, which was a bit mental, but I absolutely felt like I was alive again, and that it was tapping into this bit of creativity that I was missing out on.
You felt inspired again.
Yes, yeah, nervous as hell because, imposter syndrome was really setting in. I was out of my comfort zone. There was a part of me that wasn't sure that I was really even cut out to be a writer. I mean, I still think that sometimes.
Do you think that's part of the process, though? Always thinking, what do I have to say?
Yeah.
I don't deserve this platform, this place. What have I got to say? I feel a little bit like that with the podcast in some ways. Why should I have this space?
But then you have to say, why shouldn't you? And I think we're not, it's not easy for us to ask that of ourselves, but we should. Why shouldn't we? I think also it's about coming to know the kind of writer you are, coming to know the kind of podcast maker you are. And I'm still on that road to discovery, that path of discovery. But I know I'm not a quick writer.
You're a slow burner.
I'm a slow burner. I like to really think. I like to do my research. I like my work to be guided by purpose. And and I suppose all work is guided by some sort of purpose. But for me, that's quite an important thing, that I feel whatever I'm doing will hopefully make an impact to someone's life. Maybe that's a bit too grand a statement, but it'll have sparks some discourse with others.
Critical Care isn't the first play you've written, is it? You wrote Burning Butterflies as well. Was that in 2018? Was that part of your MA?
Yeah, so that was the first proper full-length play that I wrote.
And how did that come about then? I mean, obviously it was part of your course, but where did that idea come from?
I think now, looking back, it was probably quite personal, not in the content of the plot. That's very far removed from who I am and my own experiences, because it's about a young woman who's being abused by her father. It was, I think, looking back now, it was a real reflection on me feeling trapped, like these butterflies that are trapped in these little glass cases in her room, and not knowing what the right path was to take. And the right path for her is eventually having to speak up, to act. And I think that was really probably symbolic of where I was in my life at that time creatively. I needed to do something. I needed to act. I needed to advocate for myself. And that was really tough, because that came with guilt, a feeling of guilt, that a feeling that I was giving up a decent, well-paid job that I did really love. I'd fallen out of love with, that I was potentially putting my family in a precarious financial situation, that was being a bit selfish because I was prioritizing my own creativity above providing for them and making sure that we could go on nice holidays. So yeah, I think it was a difficult, I was going through a difficult transition in my own life, not in my personal life, but in my own self-belief and desire to do something different.
I think your honesty there and your vulnerability will really resonate with a lot of people, especially those who are taking the road less travelled, trying something new, who really feel like they've got something that they want to share, but they are afraid of what people will think, of the impact it will have on the time they spend with their family, with their friends. We all need to earn a living. And sometimes, what we want to do creatively isn't or shouldn't be a priority,
Yeah.
because, we have stuff to do.
Yes.
The bills don't pay themselves. So how are you now, as you're writing your thesis and you're really exploring the play Critical Care, how are you now managing to prioritize your creative time and your energy and your space?
Yeah, I would say that's a really good question and a difficult one to answer because I'm probably not doing it to the best of my abilities. But what I have done is I've been in a really fortunate position through this PhD to be able to carve out time to be creative as part of the research process. And so I've made playwriting, collaborative, creative writing activities with nurses an integral part of doing the research itself. I suppose that I've made it that way because I sometimes see creativity in my own life, not in anyone else's life, because I would definitely never give anyone else this advice or, way of thinking. But I can sometimes find it a bit of a selfish, self-indulgent thing.
Where does that come from, do you think?
I guess really because I'm from a working class background, and everyone in my life have worked really, really hard, and have worked tirelessly in many different ways, a lot of physical labour to support me to do the things that I have wanted to do in my life. And I suppose I guess I almost feel quite guilty about that. And that's something I've struggled to let go of. And they'd never want me to feel guilty about that. But I suppose, yeah, if I'm being honest, that's probably where it does come from. I'm driven by wanting to make them proud of me and for them to feel like it has been worth it. But equally, there is something in me that really desires this for me, and it's about balancing the two. And I think to do that, I try to create work that is meaningful for people, people like me.
I was wondering what came first, if it was the idea of critical care or if it was the idea of the PhD.
Well, I answered an advert which was advertising this PhD. So the PhD was already funded as a means of using arts-based practice to research the experiences and ethical dilemmas of healthcare workers. So I went into it, I basically saw this advert and it just felt, I don't know what it was, but it was this immense feeling of this, I've got to do this. And I don't know why that,
This is it.
yeah. And
did it feel like a burning? Because because my dad used to say, when you feel inspired, you'll get the fire in your belly. And I always go back to that. Feeling motivated to do something is very different from feeling inspired, I think.
yeah.
And I always think about the fire in your belly. So yeah. Did you get a burning feeling? So
I'm not sure it was a burning feeling, but it was definitely this overwhelming sense that if I don't get this, I don't know what I'm going to do. And it was really weird. I pinned all my hopes on this, and I'm not normally the kind of person that would do that. I'm normally very measured, very probably over cautious, think things through way too much. But yeah, I just really, really wanted it and was so excited when I got offered the opportunity to do it. So I then spent a few months just researching around the subject of the experience of healthcare workers, and we were still in the middle of the pandemic. So this was January 2021. And the more I was reading, the more affinity I felt towards nurses. Now, I'm not a nurse. I don't have any nursing background. I think the pull really was this sense of care and caring for others. But also what was really pulling me towards their stories was the fact that they weren't really being heard. And I'd read this statistic that women and nurses were facing the most detrimental impact on their mental health out of healthcare workers through the pandemic. And so I really wanted to know why that was. And we know obviously nursing globally is a majority women profession. And so I wondered whether that was to do with the fact that they're majority women, or is it something more to do with the specific experience of being a woman and a nurse, and whether that also related to how we value care in society, and therefore how that role is perceived and interpreted by the public, by the government, by hospital management, and I was just really, really keen to investigate that. And what I was really struck by in researching that was the compassion that the nurses have for their patients, for the patients' relatives, for each other. And I really wanted to capture that and understand it more. Using playwriting enabled me to do several things. What I found, so initially I started off by doing some interviews with nurses, and through that I found out a lot about their experiences of nursing during COVID. That, the more I was telling people about the stuff they were telling me, they were like, what? We didn't know this was happening. And so that was driving me to think, I need people to learn the stuff that I've been learning, because this is, this is immense what they've had to go through. It's huge. But also the nurses were saying to me, I don't feel like anyone really wants to listen to us. I feel invisible now. We were heroes, we became villains, and now we're invisible. And we're just being expected to carry on with our jobs. But we face such trauma. And so playwriting offered the chance to reinterpret, and I have to be clear about this is my reinterpretation of my experience of doing this research. I can never replicate the experience of being a nurse during COVID. I didn't walk in those shoes. I don't know what that is, but I can reinterpret the sense of what that was, and what I learned through the research through a play. Playwriting, theatre, it puts emphasis on experience, on emotions, and it has the potential to explore concurrent events in a really effective way. And these are interrelated events in a way that, seeing it on a page, you're not going to get the real sense of all these different things that were happening at the same time. Some really important themes came out that I felt embodying that experience through a play would really help to draw out and investigate further through the actual writing of the play.
How did a creative writing session, work in practice with the nurses? Like, how did you go in there? And because I can imagine that the environment that you set up had to allow them to feel safe, to be vulnerable, how did you establish that environment to enable them to open up and talk about their fears, their trauma, their experiences, their loss?
It's important to establish a rapport prior to doing the workshop. So contacting nurses, recruiting those nurses, putting them at ease by giving them lots of information, making this a really robust, ethical set of workshops that were not out to exploit, but had purpose.
How many nurses did you have in the end?
So there were 5 nurses that participated over 3 workshops. So we didn't have the full 5 for every workshop. One of the workshops, 5 attended and the others 4 attended. Yes, it was really important to make it clear that the purpose of what this is for is for research, that everything that is said will be treated, ethically, carefully. The responses will be anonymised. Any identifying features will be removed. But also, I was promoting this as a compassionate thing. The workshops were about exploring the experiences as research. They were also about helping me to write this play. So the workshops were designed to offer the participants an opportunity to contribute ideas. And finally, the workshops were also set up as a wellbeing tool. So bringing nurses together from different hospitals, from different parts of the country to share their experiences was a validating thing for these nurses. But also the activities, I designed them in a way to gently allow nurses to explore what they wanted to explore and encourage them to only share if they wanted to share. And hopefully, I'm not a therapist, I'm not an arts therapist, but they were designed in a way that I hope would give some therapeutic benefit to the participants. And yeah, they all said that it was very helpful. It was very validating, and it explored things and ideas and emotions that they perhaps suppressed, that they felt that it was time to start addressing. And for me, it was just an amazing experience to just listen. Active listening was really, really important, giving that space, adapting as well. So in the first session, I probably didn't give enough space for the nurses to talk to each other. I recognised that halfway through, changed my approach, told them that that's what I was doing, and told them that I would change the rest of the workshops to follow suit, because that's what I recognised they needed. The only downfall was that we only had 3, because I felt the third one, everyone was really warming into it, and we developed a really good rapport between us all. The work that they produced was just jaw-dropping. It was amazing. Some of the, like I said to you earlier, I'm a slow burner. I don't work quickly at all. And, I was asking them to just sit, and I was giving them prompts, and they just wrote a poem, and it was just so beautiful. I wouldn't have been able to write what they wrote in that time. So they were a brilliant bunch of people who were so generous with their time, but with their, openness and vulnerability.
With the prompts, they were questions, or you gave them some keywords and you asked them to explore those keywords?
Yeah, so each workshop was designed to address different focuses. And so there were different activities designed to draw out these different experiences. So, for example, workshop 1 was really about me trying to understand better the sensory experience of being in the ICU during the pandemic, and the sensory experience of wearing PPE, because a lot of the information that I received from the interview participants was about how difficult it was to work in PPE, how the environment changed drastically due to expansion, due to an influx of patients, an influx of redeployed staff, obviously not being able to recognise one another in PPE. So lots and lots of different factors. And so I wanted to understand more about how that felt, because obviously through writing a play, I didn't want to just give the information. I wanted to try and help an audience to understand how it is to embody that experience.
How did that translate then into the soundscape that you created? And you worked very closely with your sound designer, but how did that then translate into the sound and the lighting design?
I can't really take any credit for the sound, because that was Derek. He was just phenomenal. and he, because during the R&D, we had nurses in during that process to advise and to work with us. And Derek spent time with some of those nurses, talking to them about sound and showing them what he'd created. And I think what he really tried to do was to think about how you merge the sound of all the machinery with the undertone, the underlying emotions of that space. And he just did an amazing amazing job.
The beeping, it was so constant, like to the point where I was feeling quite uncomfortable with this repetitive sound going, going round and round, whirring around, and then the sound of the breathing. It was quite raw, quite uncomfortable at times.
Yeah, I think, and that's what we were testing out. How does that feel? How how is it a night at the theatre? Being confronted with these stories and this environment. Yeah, I know that it's definitely not going to be a play for everyone, but I think for those people who did experience it, it's definitely stirred up feelings about our own pandemic experiences, because we've all got one.
Tell me about the 4 characters in critical care. They're an amalgamation of different stories. So
Yeah, so the 4 characters range in ages and experience, which was really reflective of the different people that I interviewed or that came on board on the creative writing workshops. So you've got Alex, who's the sister of the unit, who's a mum of teenage children who are currently doing GCSEs and A-levels, which are later postponed. She is really trying hard to maintain this required level of professionalism to see her through, but to also see her team through. And in maintaining this high level of professionalism, she is trying to block out and not to get too consumed emotionally. However, through the play, she learns that she's going to have to open up. She's going to have to let people in and let them see her vulnerability. And actually, in doing so, it spurs other people, her colleagues, to do the same, which they need to do. She works very closely and has a really close bond with a character called Sam, who's a senior nurse, who's very, very experienced, lives on her own, but is a carer for her elderly mum, and unfortunately is separated from her mum at this time and is very, very worried about her mum. Her mum's vulnerable, so she's had to make the decision, do I do my job? Do I look after my mum? She chooses the job because she's got these skills that you need to do the job. She tries to keep everyone's morale high, but she's faced with some really difficult moments during the play. A colleague and friend is admitted to the unit, and she's facing the ethical dilemmas that this throws up, and is grappling with her colleague Alex's inability to show her emotions. Basically, she ends up really questioning, what am I doing? Was it worth all of this? And she loses quite a lot. I don't want to give too much away. And then we also have Morgan. Morgan's in her early 30s. She returns early from maternity leave to help out her colleagues. She returns, much like many women returning from maternity leave, is struggling with reasserting herself in her role, balancing motherhood with work, but obviously she's in the middle of a pandemic and she really finds it difficult, this idea, this concept that she's lost her voice, that she's literally been masked by the PPE. And then finally, we have Frankie, who is a newly qualified nurse, has had a few months' experience of working in HDU, which is a high dependency unit, before being transferred into ICU. We see her entering that unit feeling full of hope and vibrancy and excitement about what, the prospect, the opportunity that this is giving her. But she is quickly faced with the reality of the situation. The expectations on her are extremely high and really struggles, particularly as she is treating a young patient, and this young patient has COVID and deteriorates quite rapidly. And it's very symbolic of her deterioration of her own hope in this situation. We also see her interacting with her mum. We see a mum who's perhaps a little bit wrapped up in her own pandemic experiences to really notice what's happening for Frankie, as are her colleagues who don't really recognise her, don't know her very well. They're trying their best, but obviously it's not the induction that she was hoping for or needed. And they all coexist in this hospital together. But it was important for me to also ensure that the nurses' voices were heard. So their stories are all integrated. So I created 3 scenes, beginning, middle, and end of the play, that are them talking to me as a researcher. And so these characters actually use the words verbatim that the nurses said.
How did you get from the conception of these characters, bringing in the stories and the experiences that you'd extrapolated from the nurses into these well-rounded, grounded characters? How long did that actually take?
It did take a long time, a lot of development, and I had some great support along the way from people offering to read the script, doing a table read out loud. I had a dramaturg, Amy Crichton, helped enormously, and obviously doing the R&D was really helpful, and working with the nurses, asking them to read the script and to contribute. This process has really chimed with the kind of writer I want to be. I am a really diligent, probably over diligent person. And so the process of keeping going back to that research and looking at the themes that were drawn out of the interviews and exploring the language and the narratives that were put across through the creative writing, keep returning to that and cross-checking the play, the ideas with that, was really, really important part of the process to ensure that the play had integrity, that it wasn't just all coming out of my fantasy, out of my imagination, but trusting also that, and this was a really long path, and I have to give a massive shout out to New Perspectives team, because Jane and Anne Harrod were brilliant in giving me the confidence and, you know, really assuring me that I can trust in my own creativity and to trust that I am doing this with integrity and that I can allow myself to explore creatively. You know, beat myself up for quite a long time thinking, oh, am I the best person to be doing this? Should I be writing this play? You know, some people would say no. and some people would say yes, but I'm here and I'm doing it and I'm owning it. It was also about putting some trust in me as well. And yeah, testing it, keep testing it, getting it read. And the R&D was the biggest test. I learned so much from that. I went away and I rewrote quite a lot of the script after that, because the experience of watching it with an audience really helped me to identify where I'd maybe been a little bit self-indulgent or where I'd really missed a potential for where the character journey was going for one of the characters. I went back to the research again, you know, and really thought about what I was putting across. And yeah, that has been such an important step in the process for me. And I'd never done that before either.
A big thing that came through just now was this idea of, you know, that lack of confidence that so many of us have, I think, when we're trying to be creative, because we're always fearful of that judgment. And you're sharing those experiences with the world so that we can understand each other better. You know, understand that each of us are living through lots of different things, and we need to have that empathy and that compassion and that understanding. You know, when you think about how important it is for young people to be in that creative space in schools as well, so they can really foster that understanding of other people's experiences.
Yeah, and I think what I got doing this whole process was this sense of care and compassion are like the things that hold us up. Care will see us through our whole lives, whether that's giving care or receiving care. We need it. It's so essential, yet we don't necessarily value it as much as other things. And I kind of see so many parallels with the arts and creativity. I feel like equally, it's an act of care, isn't it, to allow yourself to be creative, to instill creativity in others, or to celebrate the creativity of others. And we don't always necessarily value that either. Yeah, I'm hoping, ever the optimist, that, with changes in arts, health and wellbeing policies and initiatives, that will help us as a society to value care and creativity more. It's essential that we rebuild it in schools. It's just such an important part of life. And you can see that it's definitely been devalued, diminished in mainstream education.
What has the funding allowed you to do now, and where do you see critical care moving forwards?
So the ACE funding enabled me to create this process where I brought together actors, director, and a sound designer with myself, and to bring nurses in on the process of embodying the script, exploring it further through the embodiment of it, putting it in front of audiences, testing it out. And those audiences were public audience at non-such studios. It was also an online audience of critical care nurses, etc., through the British Association of Critical Care Nursing, who've been a fabulous support through the whole of this research. And also we took extracts to the British Association of Critical Care Nursing conference that happened in Nottingham last year, which was the most nerve-wracking experience of my life, because it was so important that they approved of the work, and it was a really emotional but brilliant day. So it enabled me to continue to work really closely with nursing critical care experts to continue to develop the script, but to develop it in a compassionate way that was really prioritising their feedback, their thoughts. I was able to react in the moment to what the nurses who were coming in were saying, but we were able to treat them with equity. That they were also given expenses, they were paid for their time and the travel, and they were made to feel part of the team. It's really important that happened. And it was just, for me as a writer, it just opened me up to a new experience of writing, a different way of working as well. So it's helped my own practice, it's helped to develop the play, but it's also supported me in developing new networks as well, taking the plunge and having my work seen by a wider audience. So to develop my confidence as well. And hopefully it will enable me to move the play forwards. And I'm kind of we're in a bit of stagnant ground in terms of where the play's going creatively, because I'm in the midst of writing my thesis up. So I've had to put it on hold, really, because I'm learning about how to produce. I really need to find myself a producer to help me to take this forward and to really think about where the play could go. Does it belong in theatre venues? Does it belong in hospitals, education centres? Does it belong in both? I've got ideas about both of those things. I worry about taking it into a hospital, re-traumatising, nurses in their place of work where this all happened. And is it about the nurses, or is it actually about having their stories heard by other people in the hospital that didn't really understand what was happening for them? Is it for them? So these are thoughts that, I need to do more consultation really with nurses about this. I have spoken to nurses about that as part of the evaluation of doing the R&D. But, it's an ever-changing situation, isn't it? And, different hospitals and NHS trusts have different approaches to the recovery from all of this. And so, I think it's it needs to be thought about in terms of where are you taking it and what do those people need. And that's been the approach throughout. So why stop that now? Just to take, I don't want to take a blanket approach of, right, we're doing this tour and it's going to these venues and that's it. You know, it's about building it as a bespoke package, doing the right thing for the right places and audiences.
You know, throughout the whole process, you've just been taking it one step at a time, and I don't know, it sounds like you've just accepted that, you know, you are trusting yourself. That's a huge step, isn't it? It's hard listening to what you want to do when you're so busy thinking about what everyone else needs all the time.
It is for me. And I suppose that's perhaps why I felt like the nurse's stories resonated with me, not to put myself in their shoes at all, but that sense of, you know, that the message of the play is, when do you prioritize your own care and well-being above the needs of others? And that's a really hard thing for nurses to do. Really, really, really hard thing. And I think, yeah, maybe I came to the that thinking back in 2018 when I decided to do the MA. I was putting my needs above others, and that was not an easy path to take. Through doing this PhD, I was still moments of imposter syndrome coming in and making me doubt myself and whether I'm doing the right thing and should I have prioritized all of this above staying in a job that, yeah, I did enjoy and I was all right at. But I just wasn't getting the same buzz from any more creative reciprocity. Is that the right word? Yeah. Look at me.
Yeah, you wanted more. You know, thank goodness you did want more, and you have followed that burning sensation that you had. You know, it's given us critical care. So, you know, I think everyone should see it. It's I'm excited to see where it's going to go. So what were you doing last week? So you were doing Right Track, weren't you?
I assisted this year where I could. I brilliantly, the Palace are doing amazing stuff. They've got their MPO status now, and they've always advocated for new writing in Mansfield. And fantastically, they appointed 2 writers in residence this year. So they supported on the Right Track, which is a competition for local playwrights to enter a play, and then it gets, the chosen one gets performed. But we offer scratch nights for the ones that didn't get chosen, so that they can be read by actors and then given some feedback. So it's a really, really lovely project, and we've worked with different, people, varying ages over the years. So this year, yeah, I was not as heavily involved, but supported on the scratch nights and was there as a support for the writers in residence who were dramaturging the plays. So yeah, I always like to keep my hand in where I can, and I'm really grateful to the Palace because they have given me several opportunities to test out my writing. I wrote a short play for them, which was part of a trilogy of plays that were exploring local language and heritage in association with Nottingham Trent University. Yeah, it was a lovely, lovely experience. It was performed in the Palace and then it was taken into my local town as well, because it was about my local town. So the piece that I wrote. So yeah, I try to keep my hand in there where I can and help out.
Okay, so I'm just going to take each card and I'm just going to put them on the table, and then when you're ready you can tell me to stop, and then we'll just chat about the card that's come up.
Okay. Stop.
The card that has come up for you, Stacey, is no one is perfect. No one is perfect. That's why pencils have erasers.
I think that's a really good lesson to learn, because I definitely think I have stopped myself from being creative in the past from writing more, because I always want what I write to be perfect. It is a really pertinent card to pick out. And this process has especially taught me that, yes, believe in the process, but also believe in yourself a little bit more. And even now I read the play, and it's had many drafts, and still think there's room for development, room for improvement. But I can also identify things that have worked well or have developed, and I'm trying to be a bit kinder to myself and not to beat myself up on the things that still, I think, need work. The research is continuing because the actors are going to do their own research. They're going to really think about their own pandemic experiences, and they're going to go away and do some reading of nurses' experiences. They're going to bring their own, values, etc., into that role. So the reinterpretation of my reinterpretation of this research continues, and then it continues again in the performance of it. So that's something I think I really love about using arts practice as a research tool, is that the research continues to live and evolve and develop. And I think that's really exciting, a really exciting prospect.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's episode, and a huge shout out to Stacey for sharing her insights and expertise with us. As I reflect on our conversation, I'm reminded that life can be messy and unpredictable, but that's exactly when we need to tap into our inner creativity and resourcefulness. Perhaps it's time to start trusting that we already have all the essential tools we need to navigate the uncertainty of the wilderness. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a minute to like, share, and leave a review. Your feedback helps us to grow our community and create more content that inspires and uplifts our listeners. Next month, we're going to be diving into the world of doodle dance with artistic director and lead artist Jo Cohn. We'll be exploring how Jo and her team of dancers empowers children, their families, and artists to express themselves, share their ideas, and make their mark. Until next time, stay wild.